You know, we throw around words like liberty and equality all the time. But have you ever really stopped and asked yourself, where did those ideas even come from? Well, they weren't just there. Today, we're digging into the story of two massive social earthquakes, the French and Russian revolutions, that literally created the political ideas we all live with today. This isn't just a history lesson, it's like looking at the source code for our modern world. I mean, just imagine for a second. What if the very concept of individual rights just wasn't a thing? The freedom to say what you think, the idea that you're equal in the eyes of the law. We kind of take all that for granted. But these things had a violent, chaotic birth. They were forged in fire, and understanding how is key to understanding, well, everything. All right, so to really get what a huge deal these revolutions were, we first need to take a step back. We need to picture a world that's probably pretty alien to most of us. A world without rights as we know them, where kings were the law and your entire life script was already written the second you were born. And that world had a name, the old regime. The easiest way to think about it is like a super rigid pyramid. At the very, very top, you have the king, who wasn't just a ruler. He was seen as God's man on earth. And everybody else? You were just locked into your place. It didn't matter how smart or talented you were, it was all about who your parents were. A system built on privilege, not potential. Okay, so let's get to the first big one, the French Revolution. Now, this was about so much more than people being angry about the price of bread. At its heart, it was a fight for a brand new, incredibly dangerous idea, political freedom. The idea that you, an ordinary person, should have a say in how you're governed. And this table, wow. This just lays out the sheer, mind-boggling unfairness of it all. So French society was sliced into three groups, or estates. You had the clergy and the nobles. Together, they were less than 3% of the population. They had all the power, all the land, and they paid zero taxes, none. And the other 97%? Yeah, they paid for everything. You can see why this situation was basically a ticking time bomb. And this quote, man, it's chilling, right? It's from an English guy traveling through France just before everything exploded, and it tells you everything you need to know. The violence that was coming wasn't a surprise to anyone who was actually paying attention. You could practically taste the resentment in the air. It was just a matter of when, not if, it would all catch fire. And when it finally blew up, it was a whirlwind. I mean, it's hard to even wrap your head around how fast everything happened. In just 4 years, they went from storming an old prison to writing a whole new constitution, getting rid of the monarchy completely and, chopping off the king's head. An entire system that had stood for centuries was just gone. But out of all that fire and chaos came this document, and it was a total game changer, the Declaration of the Rights of Man. This was, well, it was revolutionary in the truest sense of the word. For the first time, a country was officially declaring that rights aren't something a king gives you. They're something you're born with, just because you're human. So here's the challenge, right? You've got these incredible new ideas, but most people can't read. So how do you get the message out? You use powerful symbols, a visual language of freedom that anyone could get in a heartbeat. A broken chain? That's freedom. A red cap? That's the cap a slave wore when they were freed. It was kind of like the 18th century version of a viral meme, spreading the idea of revolution everywhere. Now, the French Revolution totally shook up Europe, but the story doesn't end there, not by a long shot. About a century later, a whole new set of problems, this time from the industrial age, was about to set off a second massive earthquake, and this time it was in Russia. See, in Russia, the fight was a lot more primal. It wasn't about abstract political rights, it was about pure survival. You had millions of people working in these horrible factories for almost no money. Peasants who were basically trapped by poverty. And ruling over this whole powder keg was the Tsar, an absolute monarch who just seemed completely out of touch. And when people are that desperate, new ideas, sometimes really radical ideas, start to take hold. And that's where socialism comes in. It posed a pretty explosive question. What if the whole idea of private property, owning factories, owning land, was the actual root of the problem? What if the answer was to get rid of it completely? And then you get thinkers like Karl Marx, who took that idea and basically cranked it up to 11. He saw all of history as one long fight between the people who owned stuff and the people who worked for them. And for him, the only way out was a workers' revolution, to just completely smash capitalism for good. And you know what? Just like in France, things in Russia happened fast, like dizzyingly fast. There was a failed attempt in 1905, then World War I just wrecked the country, and then suddenly, boom, After centuries of rule, the Tsar was gone, and this small, radical group called the Bolsheviks swooped in and grabbed power. The Bolsheviks did not waste a second. I mean, they took power and immediately started turning their ideas into reality. They took over all of the big industries and banks, declared all land to be social property. This wasn't just a new government. They were trying to completely rebuild society from the ground up, on a totally new foundation. All right, so we've got these two massive social earthquakes, right? Both of them smashed the old world, but they had totally different blueprints for what to build in its place. One was all about freedom for the individual. The other was about equality for the group. So let's put them side by side. And this is where you really see the core difference. It's the heart of the whole thing. The French Revolution gave us the language of individual rights, democracy, the rule of law. The Russian Revolution, on the other hand, was so focused on achieving economic equality that it often pushed individual liberty to the side, leading to a very different kind of state. But here's where it gets really fascinating. Even though these two ideas seem totally opposed, they both became super powerful tools for people fighting for freedom all over the world. Anti-colonial movements everywhere, from Asia to Africa, would grab ideas from both revolutions. They'd mix the French call for rights with the Russian call for economic justice to fight for their own liberation. Okay, so why are we talking about all this old history, revolutions from centuries ago? What's that got to do with you right now? Well, it turns out everything. The aftershocks from these two events are still shaping our world in ways we might not even realize. Because this is the big takeaway. That push and pull, that tension between your freedom as an individual and what's good for everyone as a group, that's the central political argument of the last century, and it is absolutely still going on today. Every time we argue about taxes or healthcare or free speech, we're basically having another round of the debate that started in Paris and St. Petersburg. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. This struggle between liberty and equality is not over, not even close. It's playing out every single day in our politics, in our economics, and in the kind of future we're all trying to build. The ghosts of these two revolutions aren't just in the history books. They're right here with us. And that's their powerful and complicated legacy.